I never thought my life would come to this, lying in our king-sized bed in the dark, pretending I couldn't see a thing, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. My name is Elowen, I'm 32, and for the past 5 years, I've poured everything into my marriage with Caspian, cooking his favorite meals after long days at my graphic design job, raising our little boy, Theo, who's just turned 4, and ignoring those nagging doubts that started creeping in 6 months ago. His late nights at the office, the whispered phone calls he took in the garage, the way he'd lock his screen whenever I walked into the room, it all built up until I couldn't take it anymore. So I faked a chemical splash at work that supposedly blinded me, complete with a doctor's note from a friend who owed me a favor, just to see what he'd do when he thought I was helpless. Welcome to Stories of Auntie Maya. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you, right? Now, I read every single comment and it helps me to know I'm not alone in this. That first night, after Caspian helped me up the stairs like I was made of glass, tucking me in with this overly sweet voice that didn't match the impatience in his grip, I waited until his breathing slowed beside me, pretending to drift off myself. But sleep was the last thing on my mind. I was wide awake, ears straining for any clue, my body tense under the covers as the house settled into silence. Then it came, a low, muffled voice from downstairs, like someone trying not to be heard, followed by the distinct creak of the front door easing open, the kind of sound that sends chills down your spine because it means someone's sneaking in or out, when they shouldn't be. I froze, my breath catching in my throat, as footsteps padded softly across the living room floor below us. Who could that be at this hour? Caspian was right here next to me, snoring lightly now, so it wasn't him, unless he'd slipped out earlier without me noticing. But no, I'd felt him climb into bed. The voice murmured again, too quiet to make out words, but it sounded female, intimate, like a secret conversation that wasn't meant for anyone else. My mind raced with possibilities. An affair? Some shady business deal? Whatever it was, it terrified me, making my palms sweat as I lay there, eyes squeezed shut behind the fake bandages. Realizing my plan to test him had uncovered something way darker than I expected. I wanted to jump up, rip off the wraps, and storm downstairs to confront whoever it was. But I couldn't blow my cover on night one. I needed proof, solid evidence of whatever betrayal was unfolding. The footsteps moved closer to the stairs, pausing as if listening, and my fear spiked, imagining them coming up here right into our bedroom. Shh, keep it down, I heard the voice whisper clearer now. And my blood ran cold because it wasn't just any voice, it had a familiar lilt, like Caspian's sister Vespera, but why would she be here in the middle of the night, sneaking around our house? The door creaked wider, and I caught a faint whiff of perfume wafting up, the same floral scent Vespera always wore, confirming my suspicion and twisting the knife deeper, because if she was involved, this wasn't just about Caspian cheating, it could be a family conspiracy against me. My heart hammered so loud I was sure he'd wake up, but he didn't stir, and the intruder, or visitors, moved toward the kitchen, their voices dropping to hushed tones again. I strained to listen, picking up fragments. She's out of it now. Perfect time. Assets. And my stomach dropped. Betrayal mixing with raw fear, because this sounded like they were plotting something against me, while I was vulnerable. Tears stung my eyes under the bandages, but I blinked them back, forcing myself to stay still, to breathe evenly like I was asleep. How had I missed the signs for so long? I'd given up my dream of starting my own design firm to support his career in finance, handled all the parenting while he climbed the ladder, and now this, secret meetings in our own home, right under my nose. The pressure of keeping up the act was already crushing me, isolating me in this fake darkness where every sound amplified my paranoia. But I had to hold on. Uncovering the truth about Caspian's loyalty was my only goal now, no matter how terrifying it got. As the voices faded toward the back door, I heard a soft click, like a latch securing. And then silence returned, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. What if they were planning to hurt me, or worse, take Theo away? The injustice of it all burned in my chest. I'd been the perfect wife, and this was how he repaid me. My emotions boiled over into quiet sobs I muffled into the pillow. But deep down, a spark of determination ignited. I wouldn't let them win without a fight. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Theo giggling downstairs. his little feet pattering across the kitchen tiles as Caspian made breakfast, or at least pretended to for my sake. I lay there for a moment, replaying that terrifying nighttime intrusion in my head. The muffled voices, the creak of the door, Vespera's perfume lingering like a bad omen, and wondered if I'd imagined it all in my paranoia. But no, it had been real, and now I had to keep up this blind act through the day without cracking. Carefully, I peeled back the bandages just enough to peek, making sure Caspian wasn't in the room, then reapplied them snugly before calling out in a weak voice, "Caspian? Honey, can you help me down? I don't want to trip on the stairs." He came up right away, his footsteps heavy on the creaky wood steps, and when he reached the bedroom, he took my arm gently, but I could feel the tension in his fingers, like he was already annoyed at having to play nursemaid. "Of course, Elowen, take it slow," he said, guiding me down. His voice smooth, but with that edge I'd started noticing more these past months, the one that made me think he was hiding something big. As we hit the bottom step, Theo rushed over, wrapping his arms around my legs, and I knelt down carefully, pretending to feel for him, hugging him tight while my heart ached, because if Caspian was up to no good, it could tear our family apart. In the kitchen, the smell of coffee and toast filled the air, and Caspian helped me into a chair, placing a plate in front of me with what felt like scrambled eggs and bacon. "Here you go, babe, I made your favorite," he told me. But his phone buzzed on the counter almost immediately, and I heard him snatch it up quick, like he didn't want me catching a glimpse, even though he thought I couldn't see. I tilted my head as if listening to Theo babble about his toys, but really, I was straining to hear Caspian step into the hallway, his voice dropping low as he answered the call. "Yeah, it's me," he whispered, thinking I couldn't hear. But the house was quiet enough that his words carried faintly. "No, she's still adjusting, blind as a bat now, poor thing. We can talk later, but make sure no one sees you coming over tonight." My stomach twisted at that, the suspicion from last night flaring up hot, because who was he talking to in that secretive tone? Planning another late-night visit? I poked at my eggs, forcing a smile as Theo climbed onto my lap, his sticky fingers on my face, and I said, "Mommy's okay, sweetie, just eat your breakfast." But inside, anger bubbled up, mixing with the hurt of wondering if all our years together, the wedding in that little beach town, the nights we stayed up planning Theo's nursery, meant nothing to him now. Caspian hung up and came back in, clearing his throat like nothing happened, and sat down across from me. "Work's crazy today, Elowen, but I'll try to come home early," he said, his fork scraping the plate, and I nodded, reaching out blindly for my coffee mug, making sure to knock it slightly so he'd have to help. "Thanks, honey. I appreciate you," I replied, keeping my voice sweet, but when he handed it back, his touch lingered a second too long, almost possessive, and it made my skin crawl because was this all an act for him too? Theo started whining for more juice, and as Caspian got up to pour it, I heard his phone buzz again, a text this time, and he checked it discreetly, chuckling under his breath in a way that didn't sound right for work stuff. By midday, after Caspian left for the office with a quick kiss on my forehead that felt more obligatory than loving, I was alone with Theo, navigating the house by touch while secretly peeking when I could to keep an eye on him playing, with his blocks in the living room. The isolation hit me hard, pretending I couldn't see his smiles or the mess he was making. But it gave me time to think about that phone call, piecing together how his late nights had started around the time his firm landed that big client, the one he never talked details about. I sat on the couch, reading a Braille book I'd faked borrowing, but really listening for any clues left behind from last night, like maybe a forgotten note or something in the trash. Then the doorbell rang and I froze, calling out, "Who is it?" in a shaky voice, my heart racing because what if it was whoever he'd been whispering to? Theo ran to the door, yelling, "Auntie Vez!" And I heard Vespera let herself in with the spare key, her heels clicking on the floor as she scooped him up. "Hey, little man, where's your mom?" she asked, and I waved from the couch, pretending to turn toward the sound. "Over here, Vespera, thanks for coming by," I said, but her voice had that fake cheer, like last night's whisperer, and when she hugged me, that floral perfume hit me full force, confirming she'd been the one sneaking in. We settled in the living room, Theo playing nearby, and Vespera started chatting about how she'd help with meals and errands while I recovered. "Caspian called me this morning, said you might need company," she told me. But there was something off in her tone, like she was probing. I nodded, gripping my coffee tighter. Yeah, it's tough not seeing anything, but I'll manage, I replied, and she paused, then said, You know, Alawan, accidents like this change things. Maybe it's time to think about long-term plans, like insurance or dividing up responsibilities. Her words stung, hinting at those fragments I'd overheard last night about assets. And my suspicion grew because why bring that up now unless she was in on whatever Caspian was? Hiding? As the afternoon dragged on, Vespera helped with lunch. But I caught her stepping away to text someone, her fingers tapping furiously. And when she came back, she suggested, Why don't I take Theo for a playdate later? Give you some rest. I hesitated, pretending to think it over, but really not wanting him out of my sight if she was involved in this mess. Maybe tomorrow I'm still getting used to things, I said firmly, and she sighed, a little too dramatically. Suit yourself, but Caspian mentioned you might be overwhelmed. He's worried, you know. Her mention of him felt like a jab, amplifying my frustration because if they were plotting together, using my blindness against me, it made me question every family dinner we'd had, every time she'd babysat like a loving aunt. By evening, Caspian came home earlier than usual, carrying takeout bags that smelled like Chinese food, and he set the table while Vespera lingered, the three of us eating in awkward silence, broken by Theo's chatter. How was work? I asked Caspian, reaching out to feel for my fork, and he mumbled, Busy, but fine, before his phone buzzed again, and this time he excused himself to the garage, claiming a client call. I strained to listen, catching bits like, She suspects nothing. Move the money soon. And my blood boiled, the evasive behavior piling on until I wanted to scream. Vespera tried small talk, saying, Elowen, you should consider therapy for this. Blindness is a big adjustment. But her concern rang false, especially after last night. And it left me swirling with anger and hurt, committed to this pretense to dig deeper into their secrets. As they cleared the dishes, I accidentally knocked over a glass, shattering it on the floor, and Caspian snapped, Damn it, Alawan, be careful! His impatience slipping out before he caught himself. Sorry, honey, I didn't mean that, he added quickly, but the damage was done, fueling my resolve to gather clues without them knowing. The conflict was building, their actions creating this web of tension that had me on edge, questioning our shared life more than ever. The morning light filtered through the bedroom curtains, a warmth I could feel on my skin but pretended not to see, as I lay there replaying the awkward dinner from last night in my head. The way Vespera's voice had that overly cheerful ring and Caspian's quick excuses to step away. Theo's little snores came from his room down the hall, and I called out softly, Caspian, are you up? I need help getting downstairs. His footsteps approached, steady but with a hint of hurry, and when he took my arm, his touch was gentle at first, guiding me carefully down each step like he was still playing the devoted husband. In the kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee hit me, and Caspian helped me into my chair, placing a mug in my hands. Here you go, Elowen, black just like you like it, he said, his voice warm but hurried, as Theo bounded in, climbing onto my lap with sticky fingers from whatever he'd been playing with. Mommy, can we make pancakes? Theo asked, his voice full of that innocent energy, and I smiled, running my fingers through his hair. Maybe, sweetie, if Daddy has time. Caspian chuckled lightly. Sure, buddy, let's whip some up quick. I've got a meeting soon, but I can manage. As he mixed the batter, the doorbell rang and Caspian wiped his hands on a towel. That must be Vespera again. She texted she'd stop by to help today. Theo cheered and ran to the door, and I heard Vespera sweep in, her heels clicking sharply on the tile. Morning, family. I brought fresh fruit, Alawan. You need to keep your strength up. She hugged me from the side, her perfume strong and familiar, the same one from that first night, and I nodded. Thanks, Vespera, that's thoughtful of you. Caspian flipped pancakes onto plates, serving us all. But when I reached for the syrup and knocked my fork to the floor with a clatter, he sighed. Alawan, careful, let me get that for you. We ate mostly in silence, broken by Theo's chatter about his favorite cartoon, and Vespera leaned in toward me. So, Alawan, how are you feeling today? Adjusting to everything? Her tone was all concern, but it felt probing, like she was fishing for something. It's tough, but I'm managing, I replied, taking a bite. And Caspian added from across the table, Yeah, we're all adjusting, work's piling up, but family first. Vespera hummed in agreement. Absolutely, and with you like this, we should think about the future, you know? Responsibilities, that sort of thing. I tilted my head. What do you mean? She paused, then said softly, Oh, Just making sure everything's secure. Finances and all. Caspian mentioned it's been on his mind. Her words hung there, hinting at something unspoken about money. And my stomach tightened with suspicion because why bring that up now? Unless there was trouble I didn't know about. Theo asked for more pancakes, distracting us, and Caspian served him with a smile. Here you go, champ. But as Vespera helped clear the plates, she leaned close again. Allowin, seriously, if things get overwhelming, we can help sort out the household stuff. Share the load. I forced a nod. I appreciate it, but Caspian's got it handled, right? He cleared his throat from the sink. Of course, babe, don't worry. After breakfast, Caspian headed upstairs to his home office for that meeting, his door clicking shut, and Vespera suggested we sit in the living room while Theo played with his toys on the rug. Let me read the paper to you, Elowin. Keep you in the loop, she offered, rustling the pages, but her voice dropped lower as she skimmed articles. Lots of stories about families dealing with changes, like disabilities shaking things up. I shifted uncomfortably. Sounds heavy, anything good? She laughed lightly. Not really, but it makes you think about planning ahead, doesn't it? Theo made engine noises with his trucks, and I reached down to pat his head, pretending to follow the sound. Upstairs, Caspian's voice filtered down faintly through a call, muffled but carrying bits like, "Handle it soon, she's not seeing anything." And my heart skipped. Suspicion flaring because who was he talking to in that secretive way? Vespera must have heard too, because she whispered, "He's probably just updating work busy times." But her tone didn't reassure me. It amplified the hurt, making me wonder if they were keeping things from me on purpose. Yeah, probably, I said, but inside fear crept in. What if this blindness act was revealing cracks I couldn't fix? As the morning turned to afternoon, Vespera helped me navigate to the backyard for some fresh air, Theo running ahead with a ball. The sun warmed my face, birds chirping overhead, and she guided my arm. Careful on the grass, Elo, and don't want you tripping. We sat on the patio chairs, Theo kicking the ball around, and Vespera sighed. You know, Caspian cares so much, but he's got a lot on his plate. Maybe we should talk about lightening his load, like with the bills or savings. Again with the finances, her words circling without landing, and I pressed gently. Is something wrong with money? He hasn't said. She hesitated. No, just thinking ahead in case things change. Theo's ball rolled toward me, and I pretended to fumble for it, knocking over a small planter with a crash. Oh no, sorry, I said, and Vespera jumped up. It's fine, I'll clean it. But Caspian must have heard from his open window because he called down sharply. Elowin, what was that? Can't you be more careful? I'm on a call. His voice had that irritated snap, dropping the caring facade for a moment, and it stung deep, hurt blooming in my chest because he'd never talked to me like that before this pretense. Sorry, honey, it was an accident, I called back weakly, and he muttered something I couldn't catch before slamming the window shut. Vespera patted my shoulder. He's just stressed. Don't take it personally. But as she picked up the pieces, I overheard her murmur into her phone when she stepped away, thinking I couldn't hear. Yeah, it's getting complicated. Another woman might... The words cut off as Theo yelled for her, but that fragment, another woman, sent fear racing through me, isolation wrapping tighter, because if there was someone else, and I was stuck like this, pretending to be helpless, what chance did I have? I sat there, hands trembling slightly, asking myself silently, if I am truly blind, what will they do next? The thought chilled me, deepening the insecurity. Back inside for lunch, Caspian came down. All apologies now. Hey babe, sorry for snapping earlier, rough morning. He kissed my forehead, but it felt forced, and we ate sandwiches Vespera made, Theo munching happily between us. This is good, I said, reaching for a napkin and missing slightly, brushing a glass that teetered. Caspian caught it quickly. Whoa, Alowan, let's not break anything else today, okay? His tone was light, but the impatience underneath hurt, like I was becoming a burden. Vespera changed the subject. So, plans for the afternoon? I can stay and help with Theo. Caspian nodded. Yeah, that'd be great. I've got more work. As they discussed errands in low voices across the table, I strained to listen, catching whispers like, finances first, before it gets worse. But not the full sentences, leaving me piecing together shadows of secrets. My suspicion grew sharper, turning to raw fear because whatever they were hiding felt tied to our life, our security. And here I was, isolated in this fake darkness, unable to confront without risking everything. Theo tugged my sleeve. "Mommy, play with me." I hugged him close. "Soon, sweetie." But inside, the hurt swelled. Something is very wrong, and I am at my weakest point. The afternoon dragged on after Vespera left, following lunch. Her parting words about responsibilities still echoing in my head like a warning I couldn't shake. And I sat on the couch with Theo playing at my feet, his toy cars zooming across the rug while I pretended to listen blindly to their sounds. Caspian had gone back upstairs to his office, the door shutting with a firm click that felt like another barrier between us. And I called up to him softly, "Caspian, Theo's getting hungry for a snack. Can you come down and help grab something from the high shelf?" He didn't answer right away. And when his footsteps finally came down the stairs, they sounded heavy and annoyed, like every step was a chore. "Elowen, can't you feel around for the apples in the fridge? I've got a deadline," he said, opening the fridge door with a sharp tug, and I heard him set a couple on the counter before slicing one up roughly. Theo reached for a piece, giggling as juice dripped down his chin, and I thanked Caspian. But he just muttered, "Yeah, sure," without that warmth he'd had even yesterday. I tried to keep things light. "How's work going up there? You sound stressed." He paused, knife clinking against the cutting board. "It's fine, just a lot. With everything here, it's hard to focus." His words hung there, implying I was part of the everything weighing him down, and my chest tightened with exhaustion because pretending to be blind was draining me. But hearing him talk like that made me feel like a real burden. Vespera called a little later, her voice cheerful over the phone when Caspian answered in the kitchen. "Hey brother, just checking in. Elowen managing okay?" I heard him lower his voice, thinking I couldn't catch it from the living room. "She's trying, but it's getting to be too much. Rearranging life around this blindness isn't easy." Vespera replied, "I know, poor thing. But you've got responsibilities now. Maybe think about how to handle the burden without it pulling you under." Their conversation ended with him agreeing, "Yeah, we'll talk more tonight." And when he hung up, he came over to me. "That was Vespera. She'll drop by later to help with dinner. I've got to head out for a quick meeting. Won't be long." I nodded, holding Theo closer as he climbed onto my lap. "Okay, but Theo needs his bath soon. Can you do it when you get back?" Caspian sighed, grabbing his keys from the hook. "Elowen, I'm tired of juggling all this. Figure it out till I return." He left without another word, the door slamming a bit harder than necessary, and I sat there stunned. His admission of being tired slipping out like an unintentional arrow that hit me right in the heart, making me realize in that single moment how sidelined I'd become. Theo tugged at my shirt. "Mommy, where's Daddy going?" I forced a smile, pretending to feel his face. "Just work, sweetie. He'll be back soon." Alone now, the house felt too big and empty, and as Theo ran around the living room, I heard him trip over a toy block, crying out sharply. "Theo, come here, let Mommy check," I said, guiding myself carefully to him by his sobs. But in my pretense, I bumped the coffee table hard, knocking over a lamp that crashed to the floor with a shatter of glass. Theo wailed louder, "Mommy, hurt!" And I knelt down, feeling for the shards while pulling him away, my hands shaking because if I cut myself or him in this inconvenient mess, who would help? The danger of it hit me, left alone like this, pretending I couldn't see. What if something worse happened? I cleaned up as best I could, sweeping blindly with a broom from the closet, but exhaustion washed over me, leaving me terrified that this role was stripping away my place as a capable mother. By evening, as the sun must have set outside, I could feel the room cooling. Theo started whining for dinner, his little stomach growling, and I fumbled in the kitchen, heating up leftovers by touch, but burned my finger on the stove. "Ouch!" I yelped, running it under cold water, and Theo patted my leg. "Mommy, okay?" I hugged him tight. "Yes, baby, Mommy's fine." But inside, desperation built because Caspian still wasn't home, and when Vespera finally arrived, knocking lightly before entering, she tisked at the mess from the lamp. "Elowen, what happened here? This place is a hazard with you like this." I explained the accident, and she helped clean while preparing pasta. "You know, Caspian mentioned how the burden's piling up. Rearranging life around your condition isn't simple for anyone." We ate at the table, Theo slurping noodles happily, but Vespera kept talking in that helpful tone that felt like judgment. "Elowen, honestly, with Caspian so busy, maybe it's time to think about sharing responsibilities differently. You don't want to hold everyone back." Her words made me swallow hard. "Hold back? I'm trying my best." She patted my hand. Of course, but blindness changes things. He has to carry more now. Theo asked for more cheese, and as I reached to sprinkle it, I missed his plate, scattering it on the table. Vespera sighed. Let me do that, better safe. In that moment, her taking over felt like I was no longer the center of my own family, pushed to the edges while they rearranged without me. Caspian came home late that night, around 10, his footsteps weary as he entered the kitchen where Vespera and I sat with cold coffee. Theo already tucked in bed. Hey, sorry I'm late, meeting ran over, he said, dropping his bag with a thud. Vespera stood. We managed, but Elowin's had a rough afternoon. Lamp broke, dinner mishaps. He rubbed his temples. Great, more chaos. Elowin, I forgot about Theo's bath. Did you handle it? I nodded weakly. Yes, but it was hard alone. He snapped without apologizing. Well, get used to it. I can't be everywhere. Vespera chimed in. She's right, brother. The burden's real. Maybe rearrange how we handle things. He nodded at her. Yeah, we'll figure it out. As Vespera left, wishing us good night, Caspian headed upstairs without helping me, calling back, lock up if you can manage. I sat alone in the dark living room, the silence pressing in, and self-reflected in the quiet. If I were truly blind, would they still need me? The thought terrified me, leaving me exhausted and desperate, realizing that if I continued this silent pretense, I wouldn't just lose my husband. I'd lose the right to decide my own life, crushed under their growing indifference. That night, after Caspian left me sitting alone in the living room with his sharp words still ringing in my ears, the house settled into a heavy silence, broken only by the distant hum of the fridge and Theo's soft breathing from upstairs, where I'd tucked him in earlier. I sat there on the couch, my hands folded in my lap under the bandages, feeling the weight of the day pressing down on me like never before, the spilled glass, the broken lamp, Vespera's judgmental sighs, and Caspian's tired snap about not being everywhere. Tears slipped down my cheeks, soaking into the fabric, and I whispered to myself, how much more can I take? Pretending like this day after day, while they treat me like I'm fading away. But then, as I shifted to stand and make my way upstairs, I heard Caspian's voice drifting down from his office, low and calculated, talking on the phone in that confident way he used when he thought no one was listening. Yeah, Vespera, it's time to end it, he said, his words short and firm, like he was discussing a business deal. Rearrange things, finalize the paperwork, we soon. My breath caught in my throat and I froze at the bottom of the stairs, pressing my back against the wall to steady myself as his voice continued. She's not seeing it coming. This blindness makes it easy. Vespera's response came through faintly, her tone agreeing without pushing further. You're right, brother. Just handle it carefully. He hung up with a click, and I heard him lean back in his chair, letting out a satisfied sigh, as if the weight lifting from him was the one crushing me. I slid down to the floor right there, my heart racing with a mix of fear and outrage, because this wasn't just another late night or impatient snap. It was him planning to abandon me, to push me out while I sat here helpless. End it? Rearrange things? I thought. My mind spinning as the pieces from the whispers about burdens and responsibilities suddenly sharpened into something real, something that made my stomach twist. If I stayed silent, pretending to be blind like this, I'd be discarded, left with nothing, while he moved on. No more, I couldn't let that happen, not after pouring 5 years into this marriage, giving up my design dreams to build our home, only to hear him calculate my exit like I was a problem to solve. Shaking, I pulled myself up and felt my way to our bedroom, careful to make a small noise on the banister in case he was listening, and once inside, I rummaged quietly in the nightstand drawer where I kept old work stuff from my graphic design. Days. My fingers brushed against the small voice recorder I'd used back then for client meetings, jotting down ideas on the go before the accident pretense started. It was still there, compact and forgotten, with batteries that might even work. I pressed the button under the covers, hearing the faint whir as it powered on, and tested it with a whisper. Testing 1, 2, I said softly, then played it back, my own voice coming through clear enough. This could be my way. Start recording their words, capture the hints without them knowing, turn my silence into something that protected me. Caspian came down a few minutes later, his footsteps approaching the bedroom door. Elowin, you in here? Time for bed. He opened it and took my arm gently, but I could feel the detachment in his touch now, like he was going through motions. You seem off tonight, he said as he guided me to the bed. Just the day catching up, I replied, keeping my voice steady while slipping the recorder into my robe pocket. He tucked me in with a quick pat on the shoulder. Rest then, things will sort out. I lay there as he turned off the light and climbed in beside me, his breathing evening out fast, but my mind raced with quiet determination. If I continue to pretend to be blind, I will lose everything, I thought, the fear shifting into a resolve that burned steady. I wouldn't confront him, wouldn't reveal a thing yet. I'd stay silent, keep up the act. But I was no longer the victim waiting to be pushed aside. The morning light warmed my face through the kitchen window as I sat at the table, pretending to sip my coffee while Theo played with his spoon, clinking it against his cereal bowl. Caspian rushed around, grabbing his briefcase and phone, his footsteps quick on the tile floor. "Elowen, I'm heading out early. Big meeting at the firm," he said, leaning down to kiss Theo's head but barely brushing my shoulder. "And leave the laptop alone on the counter. Don't touch it. I left it charging, but it's got sensitive work stuff open." His warning hung in the air like a red flag, spiking my suspicion because why mention it unless there was something to hide? Theo looked up at him. "Bye, Daddy. Bring candy." Caspian chuckled shortly. "Maybe, buddy, if you're good for Mommy." He glanced at me. "You okay alone till Vespera comes? She texted she'll be here by lunch." I nodded weakly, keeping my voice soft. "Yes, we'll manage. Have a good day, honey." The front door clicked shut behind him, and I heard his car pull away, leaving the house quiet except for Theo's giggles. I waited a few minutes, making sure he was really gone, then felt my way to the counter where he'd left the laptop, my heart pounding under the pretense. Theo tugged at my robe. "Mommy, play with me?" I knelt down carefully, hugging him. "In a minute, sweetie. Mommy needs to check something." Pretending to bump into the counter accidentally, I reached out and brushed the laptop screen. Feeling it warm and awake, the lid already open just like he'd said. The voice assistant I'd set up earlier for blind navigation kicked in softly when I tapped the trackpad. "Screen reader activated," it murmured in my earbud, and I whispered commands to scroll through open tabs, my fingers hovering as if unsure. An email app was front and center, logged in without a password prompt. His carelessness finally biting him. The reader started on the first unread message, dated last night, from someone named Mira. "Can't wait for tonight, love. Miss your touch after that wild weekend. When are you finally leaving her? XOXO." My stomach twisted hard, the intimate words confirming the affair I'd suspected, with details like wild weekend painting a picture I couldn't unsee. I snapped a quick photo with my phone hidden in my palm, capturing the timestamp and the sender's full email. Shaking slightly, I commanded the reader to switch tabs, and it landed on his bank app. Still open to recent transactions, another slip in his rush. "Transaction history," it read out. "Transfer to private account, $15,000 from joint savings. Note, for investment adjustment. Password changed on joint account December 20th, 2025. The amounts hit me like a slap, our shared money, manipulated without my knowledge, hiding funds in a private setup that screamed fraud. I photographed the screen again, zooming in on specifics. The account number ending in 4789, and the email confirmation sent to Caspian with a CC to Vespera. "Why her?" I whispered to myself, piecing it together as family involvement in the scam. Theo called from the table. "Mommy, I'm done eating. Story time?" I forced a smile, closing the laptop lid carefully. "Coming, baby. Let's read your favorite book." But inside, fear melted into a cold control, knowing these screenshots were irrefutable. Hard evidence that could unravel everything if I chose. Vespera arrived around noon, her heels clicking as she let herself in with the spare key. "Hello, Elowen. Brought some soup for lunch. Theo loves it." Theo ran to her, hugging her legs. "Auntie Vez, soup yummy." She laughed, setting bags down. "Yes, little one, let's heat it up." I pretended to navigate to the table slowly. "Thanks, Vespera." Morning was quiet without Caspian. She guided me to a chair. "He's busy, as always. Said you shouldn't worry about his work stuff." Her tone had that probing edge, but I kept quiet, letting her chatter while Theo ate. "Elowen, you look pale. Adjusting okay?" I nodded. "Just the usual blindness makes everything harder." She patted my hand. "It does change things, doesn't it?" Caspian mentioned handling some adjustments. Theo spilled a bit of soup, and as she cleaned it, I slipped away to the bathroom under the pretense of needing a moment, whispering into my phone to text Leora, "Urgent, sending files now. Check authenticity." I attached the photos via email. my fingers flying under the sink's running water to mask any sound. My phone buzzed a few minutes later with Leora's call. I answered on speaker, pretending it was a voice memo app for notes. "Alowan, I got the attachments. Holy crap, this is big," she said, her voice calm but serious. First, the email from Mira. Timestamp matches server logs I can see publicly from the domain. It's real. And the language screams affair, no doubt, I whispered back. And the bank stuff? Leora paused, typing on her end. The transaction photo shows a clear transfer from your joint account to a private one in his name. Only amount $15,000. Implications. That's fraud if he didn't have your consent manipulating marital assets. Password change without notice? That's hiding funds, could be embezzlement territory. Theo knocked on the door. "Mommy?" I hushed. "One sec, sweetie," Leora continued. "Back it up on a cloud drive under a new account. Use voice commands to avoid traces. Preserve originals. Don't delete anything on his laptop." Her guidance was straightforward, no overpromising, just realistic steps to protect me. "Thanks, Leora, you're a lifesaver," I said softly. "Just be careful. Don't act yet. Build more if you can." We hung up and I rejoined Vespera in the kitchen. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yes, just a headache, Theo. Want to play outside?" The afternoon passed with Theo in the yard, Vespera watching him while I rested on the porch, but really memorizing those details in my head. Mira's email, the transfer amount, Vespera's CC. I have it all now, I thought, the emotional shift settling in, fear giving way to a steely control, then a quiet coldness toward the man I'd loved. Caspian texted around 5. "Home late, dinner with clients." Vespera read it to me. "He's working hard, Alowan. Don't stress." I smiled faintly. "I won't." She made dinner, pasta again, and we ate with Theo's chatter filling the gaps. "This is good, Vespera. Tell Caspian thanks for sending you." She nodded. "He cares, just busy." But her words rang hollow now, with the evidence burning in my phone. After she left, waving goodbye, I tucked Theo in, reading him a story by feel. His head on my shoulder. "Night, Mommy. Love you." "Love you too, baby." Upstairs, I lay in bed alone, the house dark and silent, knowing exactly who my husband was. A cheater siphoning our money with his sister's help, and realizing that from this moment, he was no longer safe because if I wanted, I could destroy him with what I held. That evening after Vespera left and Theo was tucked in bed, I sat on the couch in the dark living room, my phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline, replaying those damning screenshots in my mind, the intimate email from Mira, the $15. EUO0 transfer to Caspian's private account with Vespera's name CC'd on the confirmation. My heart still raced from the discovery, but the coldness had settled in, turning my fear into something sharper, more focused. I texted Leora under the blanket of my robe, keeping my movements subtle in case Caspian came home early. "Got the backup safe?" She replied almost immediately. "Yes, all preserved in a secure cloud folder, your name only." "What's next?" "We need to hit him where it hurts without you showing your cards." I whispered back via voice to text. "Tip his workplace anonymously about the fraud, use the transaction details. Make it look like a concerned colleague." Leora paused, then typed. "Smart. I'll set up an anonymous email through a proxy, attach the photo without traces back to you. Send it to their compliance department. I found the address on their site." I nodded to myself in the silence, feeling the first real thrill of control since this nightmare started. "Do it tonight. Let the stress hit him tomorrow," Leora confirmed. "On it. Meanwhile, when Vespera comes over, plant some doubts, ask innocent questions about money or his work friends. I'll coach you on what to say." The front door creaked open then, and I quickly locked my phone, pretending to doze on the couch as Caspian's footsteps entered the room. "Alowan, you asleep down here?" he asked. His voice tired, but with that underlying edge I'd come to recognize as guilt. I stirred slowly, tilting my head toward the sound. "Just resting, honey. Theo's in bed." "How was your dinner with clients?" He dropped his keys on the table with a clink. "Fine. Productive. Mira says hi. She's the one helping with those deals." His casual mention of her name hit like a punch, but I kept my face neutral under the bandages. "Mira, the colleague you mentioned? Sounds nice." He cleared his throat. "Yeah, sharp woman. Anyway, let's get you upstairs. Don't want you straining." He took my arm, guiding me up the stairs like usual, but I noticed his hand was sweatier, maybe from whatever dinner he'd really had. In the bedroom, he helped me into bed, then went to the bathroom to shower, leaving his phone on the nightstand. "Night, babe, sleep well," he said when he came back, sliding under the covers. I mumbled a good night, but lay there awake. My mind on Leora's tip-off email flying out into the night, aimed right at his job. The next morning started with Theo's laughter from his room, pulling me out of a light sleep, and I called out softly, "Caspian, Theo's up, help me to him." He groaned from beside me. "Coming, Elowen, just give me a sec." He got up yawning and guided me down the hall, but his phone buzzed on the dresser before we left the room. "Work already?" I asked innocently. He snatched it up. "Probably nothing, yeah, email from compliance. Weird." His tone shifted slightly, a hint of tension, and I hid my satisfaction as Theo hugged my legs. "Mommy, breakfast!" Down in the kitchen, Caspian made toast while I fumbled for Theo's juice, spilling a drop on the counter. "Careful, Elowen, that's the third time this week," he snapped lightly, wiping it up. Theo climbed into his chair. "Daddy, you okay? You look mad." Caspian forced a smile. "I'm fine, buddy, just a busy day ahead." His phone buzzed again and he stepped into the garage to answer, his voice low. "What, an anonymous tip about transfers? That's ridiculous, must be a mistake." I strained to hear, pretending to pour cereal, and caught fragments. "Investigate? Joint accounts? No, I can explain." He came back in pale, setting his coffee down hard. "Everything all right at work?" I asked, tilting my head. He hesitated. "Yeah, just some mix-up, nothing to worry about." But his hands shook slightly as he buttered his toast, and I felt the stress radiating off him. My anonymous strike landing exactly where it needed to. Vespera arrived mid-morning, knocking and sweeping in with her usual energy. "Good morning, family. Brought fresh muffins, Elowen, you need the carbs." Theo cheered and grabbed one, crumbs flying. "Thanks, Auntie." She helped me to the table, her perfume strong as ever. "Caspian already left? He sounded off on the phone earlier." I nodded slowly. "He got some work emails, mentioned a compliance thing. You know anything about that?" Vespera paused, muffin halfway to her mouth. "Compliance? No, why would I? Probably routine." But her voice had a slight waver, and I pressed gently, following Leora's coach script from our quick text exchange. "Just curious, he's been stressed about money lately, changing passwords on our accounts or something." "You two talk about finances a lot?" She cleared her throat. "Oh, occasionally, family stuff." "Why ask now?" Theo interrupted with a sticky hug. "Auntie, play cars?" She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Sure, little man Elowen, rest while we play." While they were in the living room, I rested on the couch, but texted Leora under a throw blanket. "Planted the doubt, she's rattled." "What's next?" Leora replied fast. "Good, next time she visits, mention Mira casually, like Caspian dropped her name. Watch her reaction. It'll weaken their alliance." Caspian called around lunch, his voice tight over the speaker when Vespera answered for me. "Ves, put Elowen on. Wait, actually, you first. That tip-off, someone knows about the transfer. We need to cover it." Vespera stepped away, thinking I couldn't hear. "Calm down, brother, probably a glitch. I'll check the emails." I stayed still, letting them whisper, but caught her saying, "Mira involved? She better not slip." Their panic fueled me, eroding his confidence step by step without me lifting a finger visibly. By afternoon, Theo napped, and Vespera sat with me in the kitchen, sipping tea. "Elowen, you seem different today. More questions." I shrugged blindly. "Just thinking about our savings, Caspian changed the password without telling me." "Odd, right?" She shifted in her chair. "He probably forgot. I'll remind him." But her tone was defensive, doubts planting like seeds. "And who's Mira? He mentions her a lot lately." Vespera coughed on her tea. "Just a work friend, why?" I sighed. "No reason, sounds close, that's all." She changed the subject quickly. "Let's plan dinner, pasta again?" Theo woke up crying then, and she rushed to him. But I could tell she was unsettled, their alliance cracking under subtle pressure. Caspian came home earlier than usual that evening, slamming the door. Rough day investigation starting at work over some bogus tip. He paced the kitchen while Vespera cooked. "Bogus? What about?" she asked, glancing at me. I pretended to listen blankly from the table, Theo on my lap coloring. "Someone claimed fraud on accounts. Ridiculous." His stress was palpable, sweat on his brow. "Elowen, you hear anything weird?" I shook my head. "No, honey, sounds scary. You okay?" He grunted. "I'll handle it." Vespera shot him a look. "Maybe check those passwords you changed." He froze. "How do you know?" She backpedaled. "You mentioned it once." Their exchange hung awkward, my secret blows landing. Suspense building as I eroded his world quietly. The next day, After Caspian's rough day at work with that investigation hanging over him like a storm cloud, Vespera suggested we host a small family gathering at our house that evening, said it would lift everyone's spirits during the holidays, especially with my condition making things tense. Theo was excited, bouncing around the living room as we set up, his little hands helping me feel for plates on the table while I kept up the blind act, bandages snug over my eyes. "Mommy, Grandma coming? And Uncle?" he asked, and I nodded, hugging him close. "Yes, sweetie, everyone's coming to see you." Inside, my pulse raced because this was my chance to start exposing the truth subtly. Without blowing my cover yet, I'd texted Leora early that morning for advice, and she coached me on how to drop hints from the evidence, maybe play a snippet from the recorder I'd hidden in the kitchen yesterday, capturing their whispers about the transfers and Mira. Vespera bustled in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a salad, her knife clicking against the cutting board. "Elowen, sit down, I'll handle this. You don't want to cut yourself," she said. Her voice overly sweet, but with that edge I'd noticed more since planting those doubts. I pretended to bump the counter lightly, reaching for a glass. "Thanks, Vespera, it's hard not seeing." Caspian seemed so stressed last night about work, mentioned some tip-off on funds. "You think it's related to those password changes on our joint account?" She paused, the chopping stopping for a second. "Password changes? He probably just updated for security. Why bring that up now?" I shrugged innocently. "Just wondering. Heard him on the phone about a $15,000 transfer, too." Odd, right? Her face, I peeked quickly under the bandage when she turned, went pale, and she forced a laugh. "Must be a mix-up. Let's focus on the gathering." Family started arriving around 6, the doorbell ringing as Caspian's parents, his uncle, and a couple of cousins filed in, their voices filling the house with holiday cheer that felt forced given the undercurrents. "Elowen, dear, how are you coping?" his mother asked, hugging me gently, her floral scent mixing with the aroma of the roast Vespera had in the oven. "I'm managing, Mom, thanks for coming," I replied, letting her guide me to the couch where Theo climbed onto my lap, showing off his new toy car. Caspian got home just in time, his tie loosened and face drawn from whatever meetings he'd endured, probably dodging questions about that anonymous tip. "Hey everyone, sorry I'm late, work's a beast," he said, shaking hands with his uncle before kissing my forehead absently. "Elowen, you okay here?" I nodded. "Yes, honey, just chatting. Your mom was asking about your stress, mentioned that compliance email?" The room quieted a bit as relatives settled around the living room with drinks. Caspian's father pouring wine. "Compliance? What's that about, son?" his dad asked, handing him a glass. Caspian cleared his throat, sitting next to me but shifting uncomfortably. "Oh, nothing big, some routine check at the firm. Probably a glitch." Vespera jumped in from the kitchen doorway. "Yeah, these things happen. Caspian's got it under control." But I felt the tension rise, and that's when I decided to drop the first snippet. I'd transferred a short audio clip from the recorder to my phone, the one from yesterday where he whispered to her about covering the transfer. Pretending to fumble for my phone to check the time with voice assist, I hit play softly, angling it so it seemed accidental, the volume low but audible in the quiet moment. That tip-off, someone knows about the transfer. "We need to cover it," Caspian's voice crackled from the speaker, followed by Vespera's. "Calm down." "Brother, probably a glitch. I'll check the emails." The room went silent, his uncle mid-sip on his wine, staring at Caspian. "What was that? Sounded like you two talking about money issues," his cousin said, leaning forward. Caspian froze, his hand tightening on his glass. "Elowen, what the hell? How did you get that? Must be some old recording or something." I tilted my head innocently. "Oh, sorry, my phone must have glitched. I was trying to play a story for Theo. But that does sound like you transfer? Like the $15? €15 from our joint savings?" Vespera rushed over, her face flushed. "It's nothing, everyone, just work talk. Caspian, explain," he stammered, setting his glass down. "Yeah, it's about a client account, nothing to do with us personally." "Elowen, you shouldn't play random stuff like that." His mother frowned, crossing her arms. "Sounds personal to me, joint savings. You two having money troubles?" The uncle chimed in. "And why's Vespera checking emails? You involving family and firm business?" Caspian rubbed his temples, sweat beading on his forehead. No, it's all fine, just a misunderstanding. Let's eat, dinner smells great." But the facade was cracking, relatives exchanging glances as we moved to the table. Theo, oblivious and chattering about his car. "Pass the salad, please," I said, reaching blindly, and Vespera handed it over quickly. Here, Alawan, careful. During dinner, I dropped another hint casually. Caspian, you mentioned Mira again yesterday. Who is she exactly? Colleague helping with those deals? His fork clattered against the plate. Mira, just work friend, why? His cousin raised an eyebrow. Sounds close, wild weekends or something? I think I saw an email pop up on your phone once. Vespera shot Caspian a panicked look across the table. It's professional, everyone. Let's not jump to conclusions. But his father pressed. Son, if there's funny business with money or other things, we need to know. Elowen's family, too. Caspian defended awkwardly, his voice rising. Dad, it's nothing like that. Elowen's blindness has us all stressed, probably hearing things wrong. I felt a partial satisfaction bloom in my chest, my long-suppressed anger easing as witnesses started questioning his stories. I'm not hearing wrong, honey. That recording was clear, I said softly, pretending confusion. Theo tugged my sleeve. Mommy, why Daddy mad? I hushed him. It's okay, sweetie, grown-up talk. The exposure was unraveling him. Relatives murmuring about transfers and Mira as dessert came out, pie from the bakery. By the end of the evening, as family said goodbyes at the door, his uncle pulled Caspian aside. Fix this, boy, doesn't sound right. His mother hugged me tight. Call if you need us, dear. We're worried. Vespera lingered, whispering to Caspian in the hall. She knows something, be careful. He nodded tensely. I will, damn glitch. Once everyone left, Caspian turned to me in the living room, helping me to the couch, but his touch rougher. Elowen, that phone thing. What was it really? I shrugged blindly. Accident, honey. Sorry if it embarrassed you. He paced. It did. Family's asking questions now. Theo yawned from the stairs. Bedtime, Mommy? I stood carefully. Yes, baby. Coming. Caspian sighed. I'll put him down, you rest. As he went up, I sat there, the partial satisfaction warming me because justice was emerging, his facade crumbling in front of witnesses. The morning after that awkward family gathering, where my accidental play of the recording snippet had everyone whispering and questioning Caspian about money and work friends, I woke up to Theo's little voice calling from his room, his feet pattering as he ran in and jumped on our bed. Mommy, Daddy, up! I'm hungry! I pretended to stir slowly, reaching out to feel for him and pulling him into a hug, his warm body squirming against me while Caspian groaned beside us, sitting up with a yawn. All right, buddy, let's get breakfast going. Alawan, you need help down? He took my arm as usual, guiding me downstairs to the kitchen, but I could feel the tension in his touch, like he was still reeling from last night's doubts hanging in the air. Theo climbed into his chair, banging his spoon on the table, and I fumbled for the cereal box on the counter, making sure to spill a few pieces to keep up the act. Oops, sorry, can't see them. Caspian, can you pick those up? He sighed, sweeping them into his hand. Sure, but be more careful next time. That dinner last night was a disaster. Your phone glitch started all those questions. I tilted my head toward him, keeping my voice calm. Glitch? It sounded real to me, like you and Vespera talking about covering something up. We need to talk privately about what's really going on. He set the bowl in front of Theo a bit too hard, the spoon clinking loudly, and glanced at our son munching happily. Later, Elowen, not in front of Theo. It's nothing, just work stress. Duh, but his tone had that defensive edge, like he was already bracing for a fight. And I nodded slowly, waiting until Theo finished his cereal and ran off to play with his blocks in the living room. Now, Caspian, tell me the truth. You've been planning to leave me, haven't you? Using my blindness as an excuse to rearrange everything. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. What? That's ridiculous. Where's this coming from? Your condition's making you paranoid. No one's leaving anyone. I stood up carefully, pretending to steady myself on the table, but my resolve was iron now. Paranoid? I know about the affair, the intimate emails with Mira, talking about missing your touch and weekends together. You've been betraying me while I sit here helpless. His breath caught and he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Mira, she's just a colleague. You're imagining things because you can't see. This blindness is twisting your mind. Sit down before you hurt yourself. I shook my head, feeling the anger rise but keeping it controlled, my hand slipping into my pocket where my phone held the backups. I'm not imagining, Caspian. And the money, you moved funds from our joint savings to your private account. Changed the passwords without telling me. That's hiding assets, isn't it? He grabbed my arm then, his fingers digging in a bit too tight. panic flashing in his voice. "Stop this. Give me your phone. That glitch last night must have come from somewhere." "You're confused, Elowen. Let me handle things like before." I pulled away firmly, stepping back toward the living room where Theo played, my heart racing but my stance solid. Handle things? Like stealing our money and cheating? I have proof of it all, the emails, the transfers, everything. He let go, his face paling as he switched tactics, his tone turning pleading. "Okay, fine, maybe I made mistakes. The money was for investments to surprise you later. And Mira..." "It was a fling over now. Please don't blow this up. We can fix it quietly." I crossed my arms, unmoved. "Fix it? You've treated me like a burden, plotting behind my back. No more lies." Vespera knocked then, letting herself in as usual, her heels echoing in the hall. "Morning, you two. Theo, Auntie brought cookies." "What's with the serious faces?" She set her bag down, glancing between us. And Theo ran in for a hug, crumbs already on his chin. "Auntie Vez, Mommy and Daddy talking loud." I turned toward her voice, keeping my blind pretense but pointing the accusation her way. "Vespera, join us. Why was the email about the money transfer CC'd to you? You're in on this. Aren't you?" She froze, her hand on Theo's shoulder. "What email? Elowen, you're not making sense. Must be the stress from your condition." "Caspian, what's she talking about?" He shot her a desperate look. "Nothing, sis." She's confused again, like last night. Help me calm her down. But she shifted uncomfortably, her voice defensive. "Yeah, probably just a misunderstanding. No one's hiding anything. Let's get Theo his cookie and forget this." I shook my head. "Misunderstanding? You've both been helping him hide the affair and the money. I know the truth now." Caspian tried bargaining again, stepping between us. "Elowen, think about Theo. He needs us together. If you push this, it'll tear the family apart. Let's talk it out, no outsiders." Vespera nodded quickly. "He's right. Keep it private. No need to involve anyone else." But I pulled out my phone using voice commands to dial. "Too late, I'm calling Roderick, my lawyer friend. He needs to hear this." Roderick answered on the second ring, his voice steady over the speaker. "Elowen, everything okay?" I held the phone up. "Roderick, come over now. I've got strong evidence of Caspian's infidelity with a colleague and possible dissipation of marital assets, hiding joint funds. Vespera's involved too." Caspian lunged for the phone then, his hand swiping at it. "Hang up, don't drag this out." But Vespera grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Brother, stop, you'll make it worse. She's serious." Roderick's voice cut through. "I'm on my way. Stay calm, Elowen. If there's infidelity and asset hiding, we can seek temporary orders to preserve what's left. Don't touch anything. I'll witness and advise when I get there." Theo peeked in from the living room, his eyes wide. "Mommy, why yelling?" I knelt down carefully, pulling him close and whispering. "It's grown-up stuff, sweetie. Go play with your blocks. Uncle Roderick's coming to help." Caspian slumped into a chair, his face defeated but still pleading. "Please, Elowen, for Theo's sake, drop this. We can work it out without lawyers." Vespera hovered by him, her hand on his shoulder. "Yeah, think about the family. No need for all this." Nada, but I stood firm, guiding Theo back to his toys. "The family's already broken because of you two. Roderick will sort the protection I need." As we waited, the tension thickened, Caspian whispering urgently to Vespera about fixing this. But I knew every card was on the table now. His betrayal, the affair, the hidden money, and judgment was inevitable, no matter how he squirmed. Roderick hung up the phone after that tense call in the kitchen, his voice echoing in my mind as he promised to be over soon. And I stood there with my hand on the table for balance, pretending the blindness still limited me, even as my heart raced with the certainty that I'd finally laid everything bare. Caspian stared at me from across the room, his face a mix of shock and desperation, while Vespera hovered by the doorway, her eyes darting between us like she was calculating her next move. "Elowen, you don't have to do this. Let's talk it out before your friend gets here," Caspian said, his tone shifting back to that pleading I'd heard earlier. But I could tell it was just another attempt to buy time. I shook my head slowly, guiding myself to the living room couch where Theo's blocks were scattered on the floor. "Talk? You've had months to talk, Caspian. Instead, you moved money from our joint account and changed the passwords behind my back, all while carrying on with Mira." Vespera stepped forward, her voice tight. "Elowen, he's right. This could all be a big misunderstanding. I only helped with some family advice. No one's trying to hurt you." But I turned toward her, my grip on the couch arm steady. "Advice? Then why were you copied on those transfer emails? You knew what he was doing and said, nothing. Caspian rubbed his temples, sinking into a chair as if the weight of it all was finally hitting him. Fine. I admit the money moves were wrong. I was stressed, thinking it was best for us long term. And Mira, it was a stupid mistake. Emotional support when things got tough here. But please, for Theo's sake, don't bring a lawyer into this. It'll destroy him. Theo peeked in from the hallway then, his small face curious but confused, and I called him over softly, pulling him onto my lap despite the bandages over my eyes. Sweetie, go grab your favorite book from upstairs. Mommy will read it to you soon. He nodded and scampered off, his footsteps fading up the stairs, and I felt a pang in my chest because protecting him was why I couldn't back down now. Vespera tried again, her words coming out in a rush. Elowen, think about the family. We can sort this without outsiders. I regret not speaking up sooner. I thought it would blow over. But her regret sounded hollow, like she was more worried about her own skin than anything else. And I didn't respond, just waited in the heavy silence until Roderick's knock came at the door. He let himself in after I called out, his presence filling the room with a calm authority as he greeted me with a gentle hand on my shoulder. Elowen, let's sit and go over this properly. Caspian, Vespera, have a seat too. I heard him pull out a chair, his briefcase clicking open on the table, and I handed him my phone again, describing the files in simple terms. The emails show the affair, intimate stuff with Mira, and the bank records prove he hid joint money, changed passwords, moved funds without telling me. Roderick hummed as he reviewed them, his pen scratching notes. This is compelling, strong evidence of infidelity, and the asset handling looks like dissipation of marital property. Elowen, if you want to file for divorce, we can seek temporary orders to preserve what's left in the accounts and address custody. Caspian leaned forward, his voice rising. Divorce? Come on, Roderick. You're her friend. Talk sense into her. This is all blown out of proportion. Vespera chimed in, her tone shaky. Exactly, no need to rush. We can mediate as a family. But Roderick stayed neutral, his words measured. Mediation requires good faith, and this evidence suggests otherwise. I'll advise filing to protect Elowen's interests, primary custody for her. Structured visitation for you, Caspian, based on stability. In the weeks that followed, as Roderick handled the paperwork and the court processed our case, the reality settled in like a quiet storm. Caspian moved out to his parents' place temporarily, his face drawn and silent when he came to pick up his things, muttering apologies that felt too late. Elowen, I never meant for it to go this far. The money was supposed to be a safety net, and Mira, she was just there when I felt trapped, he said one afternoon, packing a box in the garage while Theo played nearby, oblivious to the shift. I didn't argue, just nodded from the doorway, my blindness pretense still in place for consistency until the legal dust settled. Trapped? You chose this, Caspian. Now Theo and I have to rebuild because of it. Vespera tried reaching out once, showing up with a casserole and a forced smile, her eyes red like she'd been crying. Elowen, I should have stopped him. I thought I was helping the family. But I see now how wrong it was. Can we talk? But I shook my head, Roderick's advice echoing in my mind to limit contact. No, Vespera, you hid it all. Stay away for now. She left quietly, and later, Caspian's parents told me they'd distanced themselves from her too, disappointed in her silence while he exploited my situation. Over the next few months, the consequences rippled out. The firm's internal investigation wrapped up, citing ethics breaches over the hidden funds and his involvement with Mira, who got reprimanded too, and Caspian lost his job. His reputation in the finance world tarnished enough that he took a lower-paying role elsewhere. It's fair punishment, Roderick said during one of our check-ins, as we reviewed the divorce settlement in the living room, Theo coloring at the table. No criminal charges since the amounts weren't massive, but he'll pay restitution. Return every cent he moved, plus your share of the assets. The judge granted me primary custody, with Caspian getting structured weekend visits once he stabilized. No supervision needed since he'd never been violent, just deceitful. His parents stepped up, visiting often to help with Theo, their hugs warm as they whispered apologies for not seeing the signs sooner. We're on your side, dear. You were brave to stand up, his mom said one evening, baking cookies with Theo while I rested on the couch, the bandages finally off as I explained the pretense to them gently, their shock turning to admiration for my cleverness. As time passed, I felt the healing take root. Theo and I settled into a rhythm, his laughter filling the house again as I freelanced graphic design from home, picking up clients who'd heard my story through friends and admired my resilience. Leora stopped by weekly, her support a constant as we sipped tea on the porch, watching Theo play in the yard. "You turned vulnerability into strength," she said one sunny afternoon, Theo's castle of blocks towering beside us. Caspian's visits were awkward at first, his eyes downcast as he played with Theo under my watchful gaze. But he kept his word on the alimony, slowly rebuilding some trust for our son's sake. Vespera faded from our lives, her occasional texts ignored until she stopped trying. The family consensus clear that her role in the deception was unforgivable. And in quiet moments, like tucking Theo in at night, his small hand in mine as he whispered, "Love you, Mommy," I knew we'd made it through. Blind trust had almost destroyed us. But clarity and courage had saved me and my child, leading us to a life of peace and self-reliance. My dear, if you're watching this and feel your heart growing heavy, then perhaps you are just like me, someone who has endured so much just to keep a home peaceful, someone who stayed silent just so others could feel comfortable. I don't know your story, but if there was ever a time you thought, "It's okay, I can take a little more," then please leave me a comment with just one sentence. "I have endured. I cannot promise to change everything for you, but I want you to know this. Suffering in silence is not your duty, and staying quiet for too long will make you lose yourself. If today you aren't strong enough to say no, that's okay. Just don't blame yourself. And if this story feels like it's speaking for your heart, please subscribe and stay here with me so that every day I can remind you that the person who sacrifices the most also deserves to be treated with kindness. On screen right now, you'll see 2 new stories I think you'll really enjoy. There are many more waiting for you on the channel, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss one. See you in the next story. Until then, take care of yourself and the people you love. With all my love and respect.